I just have to say that Matt Finn has been doing such a good job reporting on the Nancy Guthrie case as the days go on. Matt, be sure absolutely check out your reports early on from Fox News Channel, Fox and Friends. Now, I guess there really is some hope as you join us here this morning from Tucson. I'm going to pull your signal up right now. It's interesting because the talk now about the genetic DNA code that they hope to crack sounds to me like it might be their best avenue of pursuit.
Yeah, so the sheriff says that there was DNA recovered from inside Nancy Guthrie's house behind me that does not belong to the family or Nancy's inner circle. And so far, there have been no hits in CODIS, which is the national database. But what's interesting about CODIS is you basically have to be a previous offender or have had DNA entered into that national database. So now the sheriff says that they are pursuing other routes, including these forensic genealogy methods, including perhaps, some private companies that people may have previously entered their DNA into. And so we've interviewed a few of these private companies and talked to them, and they actually claim that they can perhaps quickly build a larger DNA profile than law enforcement because, they say that they have all these points, these data points that they look for, and they can kind of expand into your family, into your cousins, into all these other databases where really law enforcement is primarily checking the databases of previous offenders. So had you not had any priors, or if nobody in your family had priors, they may not be able to track you. So it's a long shot, but one of these companies is credited with tracking down Brian Kohberger in the University of Idaho murders. You'll recall he was arrested, I think, a couple weeks after the initial incident. So there is hope here that DNA that has been recovered from inside the house behind me could ultimately be identified by by the private sector, and the private sector kind of claims they may have some better technology than law enforcement.
Well, but the thing about the Kohberger case is it all started with that there was just like a flash on a gas station camera of his white vehicle leaving Moscow, Idaho at the exact right time, and that's how they began to kind of piece it together. Have you heard any discussion about the vehicle that must have been in that neighborhood that fateful night for Nancy, and why we haven't seen any images of that?
Yeah, this is just kind of jaw-dropping to me that we have not had any vehicle identified to us, that law enforcement has not asked the public to look out for any type of car at all. So, obviously here in the Catalina foothills, it's extremely, extremely dark. It reminds me of the Troon area in north of Scottsdale. No light pollution, no traffic lights. So when you're out here at night, you cannot see your feet beneath you. So it's no shock that perhaps if there's any residential cameras here, any Ring cameras here, that maybe they didn't capture any of the activity. As soon as I got on the ground, I talked to a neighbor who said, yeah, we have cameras, aimed at our front door and towards the driveway, but it's not going to pick up anything on the street. So let's say in theory that none of the neighborhood cameras picked up anything. As soon as you get out of this community, you very quickly start to hit some major thoroughfares and some major streets. And so I talked to both Pima County and the city of Tucson. Pima County says it does have traffic cameras, especially at major intersections, but look, they said they're not perfect, that you may not get a license plate out of it, you may only make out the silhouette of a car. And then the city of Tucson, which is pretty much most of the area of town, they say they do not have traffic cameras that record. So there is a scenario where if the offender quickly went into the city of Tucson, they were not recorded on camera, and if they were briefly out in unincorporated Pima County, their cameras are not crystal clear. But again, I do wonder if perhaps the feds or the sheriff's department does have a car identified, if they are kind of honing in on a certain car, and maybe they're keeping that from us to protect the integrity in their investigation. But in general, I was thinking about Kohberger. I'm like, very quickly we had that white sedan. We're not getting anything here. The public's not being asked to look out for anything.
Matt, I think a lot of people, their hearts are broken. I think we're waiting to see what's happening. A lot of people may have parents who are 84 years old or grandparents, and you think, my goodness, What is her life like right now? I'm surprised, though, there hasn't been a lot more that has not been discussed about going south of the border. And I know there's no global DNA type of database, but it seems like that would really be the key in possibly helping if she's either south of the border or somewhere else.
Yeah, we're about an easy 90-minute drive north of Mexico. And so it's kind of impossible to ignore a scenario where this may involve Mexico or cartels, God forbid. So that is on the top of a lot of people's minds. So far, Sheriff Nanos here in Pima County, he has told us on camera that he is not aware of any direct link to Mexico. And, we have been informed that the FBI, it's rather standard for them to immediately get in touch with their Mexican counterparts in situations like this, that the FBI was likely in touch with Mexico as soon as it began this investigation. But so far, we just don't have any direct link there right now. But of course, people are kind of entertaining all types of theories and possibilities, sadly. And as far as, we know how difficult it is to say goodbye to your loved ones, to your parents, even under the most normal circumstances, just dying of old age. But can you imagine Savannah Guthrie and all of her family? They just don't know where she is right now.
And Matt, you've been doing such a great job on the ground reporting as well as posting all the updates on X. I have to ask you, Matt, are you a little bit perplexed on these lack of news conferences? I mean, the sheriff is doing one-on-ones, but you're not getting that news conference that you would typically get, say, if it was a different jurisdiction. It seems like you might be having one maybe daily on these types of updates, but we're not getting that.
Yeah, a lot of people are pointing out that Sheriff Nanos is not hosting these daily press conferences. Rather, maybe every other day, every third day, he's hosting these one-on-ones with a lot of different news organizations. That's just how he wants to go about it right now. I think there's a couple different competing philosophies. Some of the people who are involved on a federal level, especially the FBI, they say, hey, less information the better. You really don't have to be informing the public about anything, and so, in working with the FBI previously, the feds are usually much more tight-lipped. So then you have Sheriff Nanos, who is doing these one-on-ones, and he's talking pretty freely about a lot of things. And so then some people say, well, the more freely you talk, the more it opens up the door for speculation and theories, and you're kind of confusing us on certain things. So, I'm not Sheriff Nanos, but his decision right now is to be doing these one-on-ones. He did initially do some press conferences. There were some critics who said they didn't go too well, so perhaps that's why he's pivoted to these one-on-ones.
All right. Well, Matt, we really appreciate your time. Hopefully we can call on you again in the future. Appreciate the good work you're doing for us and for everybody at Fox News Channel.
Well done, Matt.
Thanks,
well
Matt.
done.
Thank you.